life. You're their leader. It's your responsibility to coach them, to mentor them, to train them, to remove obstacles from their path, to help them succeed, and even to hold them accountable, not only for behaviors, but also for results. Well, hello and welcome to the J. Sterling Hughes Show, where we share the straight truth on how we have grown our family law practice from 0 to 25 attorneys and doing over $15 million in revenue. And we've done that over the past 10 years. And my purpose with this podcast here is to document our journey and to share with you what is working and what's not working, with hopes that you can take that and you can recontextualize that in your practice and shorten your success curve. My name is Jeff Hughes and I'm your host, and I'm talking about a topic today that I've never seen in a podcast before, but it's very common in growing law firms. And that's the scenario where there are two attorneys that sometimes even start together, and they're peers, they're colleagues, they're both associates, or maybe they're both senior associates, and one of them is asked to step into a leadership role. And so now all of a sudden, this peer-to-peer, this even quote unquote, even relationship now has been changed. And it happens in a hurry, where now you have one person that's been elevated maybe to a partner status, and they are responsible to lead, to hold accountable, and to help those teammates win and succeed. And that requires a completely different way to manage that relationship going forward. And it can be really tough to do that. So I'm talking about this really from 3 points of view today, or from 3 topic lines. And that is, why is this the case? Why does there have to be a change, a distancing socially, for that new leader to be effective? Secondly, is what does this mean? What does this look like? How do you actually play this out and perform this and do this? And also importantly is what I'm not saying here, because there are a lot of ways you can misinterpret how I want to describe this here. And you could take this in a whole lot of different directions that I don't intend. So I want to address those issues too, okay? So let me start up front, is why is it that when a new leader goes into a position from within the team, that there has to be a relationship change? Why can't you just remain pals and buddies? So I'm imagining scenarios where you're a colleague with another attorney, and you go to dinner together, you're going out with friends, your families know each other, you know their kids, you're at each other's birthday parties, all those sort of things. And all of a sudden now you're their boss. And so that changes things. And depending on the maturity level of one or both people, their experience level of one or both people, that can be a really tumultuous time. And it's necessary because you now have a new role in their life. You're their leader. It's your responsibility to coach them, to mentor them, to train them, to remove obstacles from their path, to help them succeed, and even to hold them accountable, not only for behaviors, but also for results. And that's really challenging. And in many cases, you even have influence over their career. You can determine whether or not they get a future promotion. You can determine whether or not they get that next pay raise, or that choice client, or maybe they're terminated or not, or they're put on a performance improvement plan. So the moment you now have that type of influence on their career, your relationship changes. And I have found that attorneys that become new leaders that don't embrace that change have a really difficult time, and maybe for a long time, and maybe even fatal to their leadership. Ultimately, if they're not willing to embrace those relationship changes and those new responsibilities that they now have accepted. And this can get very cloudy in those scenarios where two people one day, two attorneys that are great friends one day, and they're peers, one of them's elevated the next day, and how that could potentially really change things and be difficult of a transition process for everybody on the team. And the sooner we as new leaders recognize this change, the better we can be in our leadership, and the more effective we can be to help our teammates succeed and to get there, and even have some restoration of some of that social closeness down the road. I believe that when someone's elevated, there needs to be an immediate distancing so they know that now the relationship has changed, and talking about that and say, now it's different, and I still love you, I still want to hang out with you, but there probably needs to be some backing off of that, at least on the short term. And it really depends on the two individuals and their own maturity, because the person who didn't get promoted may not like it. They may have thought they're the one that should have got that promotion, not you, not the other person. And it could be that they just won't ever respond in the right way to that new leader as they otherwise should if they were maybe someone coming in from outside the firm. So here's what this means. Here's what this looks like as you take on this new role. One is that you now have the responsibility to lead, and that looks like holding your teammate accountable. That looks like you supporting them in ways that you may not have had to support them before. That looks like you advocating for them, advocating for your team. That looks like you may be disciplining if you need to do that, confronting, having tough conversations around client performance issues or whatever the case may be. That's way different than what you had to do in the past. And having those tough conversations can be doubly hard if they were your buddy or are your buddy and still you care about them. You're still socially maybe connected to them. Also, not only does it look like holding them accountable and challenging them, but also it looks like you can't participate in some of those conversations you could have in the past. We all know that our teammates like to vent about leadership. That's the nature of leadership, and that is totally okay. There's a healthy place in a firm for that. There's healthy ways to do that, of course. There's healthy ways to complain to your teammates about your bosses or your supervisors, or whatever the case may be. But you as a leader, you can't participate in that. You can't be involved with that. You have to let your teammate know, look, I support the firm. I'm on the side of the entire firm, not just on you personally and letting you vent out to me. Maybe you can do this one-on-one where they come to you and they say, hey, this is what's going on. That's certainly healthy and certainly encouraged. But in these group settings where there's, we all know what happens in those, in many cases, that's something that you as a leader really need to refrain from and then keep that distance that you need to have in order to lead effectively. All right, so what am I not saying about this? I know people are going to hear me say you can't be friends anymore with your teammates if you take a position of leadership, and that is absolutely not the case. What I'm saying is the relationship has changed, and you have to recognize where those changes are and where they need to be so you can lead effectively. And that may look like for a season you're not involved socially as much or at all with your teammate. That's just the way it could look. You also now have a different responsibility that in some ways is much more acute. It's your responsibility to connect with that teammate, to let them know you care, to support them, to be there for them, to know what's going on in their life so you can continue to communicate to them that you care about where they are at in life and where they're going, and that you're there to help them remove obstacles so you can help them win. Also, a lot of times having a too close of a relationship with a teammate opens you up to allegations of favoritism. Well, the reason why so-and-so is getting that is because they're really good friends with the boss. And we don't need that. You got to be very, very cognizant of that, even if it's not true. And it's mostly never true. It's mostly not true, but it is sometimes. And so being really sensitive to that, so you're not casting those impressions or opening the door for them to allege those things is really, really important. So let me just recap all that. If you take a new position of leadership, recognize how the relationship changes and what is required in that new relationship for you to lead effectively. Embrace those differences. They don't have to be forever. They can certainly be for just a season, but they need to be there. Those distances need to be there so you can do your job in this new responsibility, this new role that you are now in. And also recognize that your maturity, your experience is going to impact the effectiveness of this new change as well as your teammates. So depending on the person, that conversation needs to be had of, look, now I'm in a new role. This is my new job. Help me do it well by allowing me to hold you accountable and allowing us to function well professionally in a different type of role than what we enjoyed in the past. Hope that's helpful to you. Hope it's helpful to someone in your firm. Have a great week.